Tony Benn, who you'll remember, great Eurosceptic and extreme left Labour MP, he used to say, I'd rather have a bad parliament than a good king, because in the end, you can then do something about it. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah, it's almost as if we'd stopped making the political case for Brexit as well once we'd won the referendum. It's, kind of like people seemingly stopped making the case for Brexit, whereas the people who are on the other side never stopped making the case for Remain. So there is this polling, which seems to suggest the majority of Brits now think Brexit was a bad idea. But at the same time, there doesn't seem to be polling showing a majority of Brits want to go back in, which I think is a classic British trait, right? Of, well, yeah, I don't like that, but I also don't want that either, which I think is actually just maybe or maybe that's just me as a Yorkshireman and we like to be bolshy. And
no, I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. There's always what psephologists call the loser's premium, right? There is in any electorate. I mean, maybe grumpy Yorkshiremen are more numerous than others, but in any electorate there is a bunch of people who say, "I am discontented," and they are discontented with the status quo. So, had the referendum gone the other way, a lot of those discontented people would have said, "Oh, this wasn't what we were promised," right? That's massively exaggerated, obviously, by the impact of lockdown. Especially because people backed lockdown, in Britain as in other places, and people are therefore very reluctant to face up to the tax rises and price rises and so on being a consequence of the policy that they were themselves demanding. So there's an element of that. But remember that the opinion polls were against us all the way through, right? It was only the actual referendum that we won. So the opinion polls are not new. And remember also something else, which I think is always missed from this debate. After Brexit, the EU and its absurdities and its scams disappeared from our media because it was no longer our problem. So when we were in the EU, cases of corruption or of referendums being struck down or of economic collapse
or bananas.
Right. These were big news because they directly impacted us. The stuff that's been happening since, the attempt to strike down the Poland insisting on its national law, the economic crisis in Germany, the massive bribery scandal in the European Parliament with those briefcases of cash being handed out by Moroccans and so on. All of that, I mean, it's just not covered anymore because it's ceased to be our problem, and therefore people are free to compare a necessarily imperfect reality with an imaginary kind of platonic alternative. In the event that there was actually a referendum, people would start focusing on the EU again, and they would look not only at the corruption and the slow growth and the fact that we've actually outperformed it, but they would look at the terms on which we were being told to go back in, that we'd have to join the euro, all that. And I have absolutely no doubt that we would win a second referendum. And the proof of that really is that despite longing with every fibre of their being to be there, this Labour government will not attempt a second referendum because they know what the outcome would be.
So no prospect of rejoin.
I mean, who can tell what will happen in 10 years, 20 years that, there may not be an EU, but in the kind of timeline that we are dealing with, no prospect.